When the giant soldiers eyed each other nervously, and no one stepped forward, Baru shouted impatiently. The ground trembled as his mighty roar echoed through the air. The giants shivered, remembering how Baru had defeated many of them before. He was way stronger than any of them. After Baru's loud scolding, one of the giants hesitated, then slowly raised his hand. Baru turned to Jin-Woo, gave him a bow, and got a thumbs up for a job well done. Thanks, Baru said with a grin. But then something totally unexpected happened. Something neither Jin-Woo nor Baru saw coming. Another giant, noticing what his buddy had just done, shot his hand up too. The look on the second giant's face was pretty clear. He thought he was way better than the first guy. Ooh, Jin-Woo muttered under his breath as the situation got interesting. It turned out the hesitation wasn't because the giants were unsure of what to do. It was because they had no clue who among them was actually the strongest. Jin-Woo burst out laughing at this unexpected twist. No, 22, and no, 6. Come on down, he called out. No, 6 had fists as big as boulders, while no, 22 looked like a solid wall of muscle. Jin-Woo studied them closely, but even with his sharp eye he couldn't tell who was stronger, just by looking. There was only one way to find out. He grinned, ready for the challenge. Ready to go. The two giants stood face to face, their expressions fierce and unyielding. Fight. Bram? Thud. Crash. The giants traded powerful blows for a while until no, 6 finally knocked no, 22 to the ground and barely won. Alright. From now on, no, 6 is the leader of the giants. No, 6 raised its fist triumphantly, and the other shadow soldiers cheered. Now that everything was settled, Jin-Woo had done everything he wanted to do in Japan. He opened his stat window. A mix of words and numbers popped up in front of him. Beep. Name. Jin-Woo Sung. Federal. 12-21-2. Job. Shadow Monarch. Titles. Demon Hunter. And 2 others. Adols. Archti. Adols. Adolsand. Adolsand. Adols. Adols. Fedels. Strength. 29 days. Stamina. 28 1. Agility. 35 Intelligence. 13 Tendency Perception. 27 7 7 7 7 7 7 7 7 7 7 7 7 7 Skills. Adols, Unknown, LV. Max, Willpower, LV. Bun. Dagger Master, LV. Max, Active Skills. Flash, LV. Max, Murderous Intent, LV. 2. Mutilation, LV. Max, Dagger Barrage, LV. Max, Stealth, LV. 2. Ruler's Authority, LV. Max, Job Exclusive Skills. Active Skills. Shadow Extraction, LV. 2. Shadow Storage, LV. 2. Monarch's Domain, LV. Shadow Exchange, LV. 2. Shadow Exchange, LV. 2. Tipped Items. Axe Crimson Knights Helmets. Demon Monarch's Earrings S. Demon Monarch's Rings S. Seeker's Shirt. Seeker's Gloves. Seeker's Pants. Seeker's Shoes. Idol. Jin-Woo checked his progress since coming to Japan, and was amazed by how much stronger he had become. Everything was pushing 300, and his intelligence stat, which he had focused on the most, had blasted past 300 a long time ago. This was thanks to the insane rewards from the daily quests he never missed, the levels he gained by hunting giants, and the super expensive defensive gear he bought from the systems shop. It was called the Seeker's Defense Gear Set. Until recently, Jin-Woo hadn't really paid much attention to the items in the system shop. But Jin-Woo had no idea how strong these monarchs and rulers really were, so he knew he had to protect himself. If even a weakened king of giants was that powerful, the others might be way too strong. Jin-Woo remembered seeing angels with 6 wings in the memories of the Shadow Monarch. If Jin-Woo wanted to survive a fight with them, he knew he had to get even stronger. He looked up from the item list and checked his level. Level 12-12. Defeating just one monarch had boosted his level by 8 times. He couldn't even guess how much stronger he'd become after fighting the rest of them. His heart raced with a mix of nerves and excitement. I'm going to level up. The power he gained from leveling up was his best weapon to protect everything he cared about. Jin-Woo's heart raced again. Thump thump thump. It felt like his 2 hearts were pounding in his ears. The pain wasn't so bad though. He noticed someone coming and called back his shadow soldiers with a strange tack-tack-tack sound. Then he heard the thud of helicopter blades. It was from the Hunters Association of Japan. Jin-Woo grinned and hopped aboard. Finally, time to go home. The Japanese government had set him up in a cool suite at a 5-star hotel. He had planned to turn down their offer because he could just use shadow exchange instead of waiting for a plane. But then they made a heartfelt request. "Please stay," they said. "If you leave, people might think we didn't treat our country's hero properly." As this was the first time he'd ever stayed in a hotel that cost 4 million won a night. It was as pricey as a brand new car. As soon as Jin-Woo stepped into his hotel suite, he couldn't believe how huge the room was all to himself. The furniture looked brand new, like it had been unpacked just that morning. He walked over to the window and gazed out at the city's bustling downtown area. A great view always makes a place feel more valuable, and this one definitely made the pricey room worth it. "Man, I still can't believe magical creatures nearly wrecked this amazing city," Jin-Woo muttered under his breath, thinking back to the ruins of Tokyo he'd seen, but he was glad he'd arrived in Japan when he did. After days of sleeping outside, a cozy hotel bed sounded perfect. "I should get some rest now," he said to himself, feeling exhausted but relieved. The next morning, employees from the Hunters Association of Japan came to pick him up for his flight. One of them greeted him with a friendly smile and perfect Korean. "Good day, Hunter Sung. There's a car ready to take you to the airport." Jin-Woo was super ready to leave. He grabbed his bag from the corner and said, "Let's go." The guide looked nervous. "Hunter Sung, don't you need extra clothes?" Jin-Woo understood why he asked that. Jin-Woo's clothes were tattered from battle, covered in blood and sweat. Even though he tried to be careful, it was impossible to avoid getting splattered with blood from the giants. Jin-Woo shrugged because all his other clothes were just as messy. The guide smiled and asked, "Would it be okay if we found you some new clothes to wear today?" Jin-Woo thought that sounded like a great idea. Jin-Woo really didn't want to be seen in bloody clothes or sneaked into the airport like some kind of criminal. The guide noticed his worried look and chuckled, saying they'd get him new clothes fast. 10 minutes later, a bunch of guys walked in carrying lots of suits. Jin-Woo raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised it happened so quickly. The handler just grinned and started explaining the plan. Jin-Woo's eyes widened as he checked out the suits laid out before him. They were arranged neatly by size and color, which was super impressive. He couldn't believe how prepared everything was. Just in case someone had really gone all out. The person offering the suit started to say something like, "And if you need anything else," but Jin-Woo quickly waved his hand and said, "No, thanks." He didn't need a thing. The hospitality he'd received so far was already top-notch, and he felt really grateful for how much effort the Hunters Association of Japan had put in. He took a closer look at the outfits and picked out the one that looked like it would fit him just right. Hunter slipped on the outfit and struck a pose in front of the mirror. The fancy clothes made him look like a totally different person. He couldn't help but grin from ear to ear. He felt dapper and confident. When he turned around, the guide's eyes lit up. "Wow, Hunter Sung, that looks perfect on you," they exclaimed. "We should probably get going," someone said. "Understood," Hunter replied, adjusting his sharp new look. The staff smiled and said, "Don't worry about your bags, they've got this." Right on cue, 2 men walked in and grabbed Jin-Woo's stuff. The Hunters Association of Japan was clearly going all out to make sure their hero didn't have to lift a finger. Jin-Woo left the fancy, 5-star hotel feeling pretty grateful for their kindness. He hopped into a sleek black sedan and headed toward the airport. As the car got closer to the airport, Jin-Woo suddenly figured out why the Hunters Association of Japan had been so worried about him being seen in public. As Jin-Woo looked out the window, he saw huge crowds of people everywhere. He was so shocked that he couldn't say a word. His guide burst out excitedly. "They're all here to see you, Hunter Sung." This wasn't just some small gathering put together by the association for show. There were way too many people for that. "Do you know how many are here?" Jin-Woo asked in disbelief. "We think there are more than 100,000 people," his guide replied. That's unbelievable." Jin-Woo stuttered, struggling to wrap his head around the numbers. The car carrying him moved smoothly along the blocked-off street, weaving through without any problems. As the vehicle turned the corner, an even bigger crowd came into view, cheering wildly for Jin-Woo. People shouted his name with excitement. "You're the hero who saved Japan, Hunter Sung." Jin-Woo stayed quiet, thinking to himself. In his mind he had just done what needed to be done. The truth was, No one else could have pulled off what he accomplished. Japan had been filled with fear and sadness after people saw the giants on social media, TV, and even in person. But Jin-Woo changed everything. Instead of offering support, most countries had decided Japan was a lost cause. But then something big happened. President Gun Hee-go from Korea's Hunters Association stepped up during a live press conference. He was actually more famous than Korea's own president. The whole world watched as he announced, "There's one hunter who wants to take on the giants." In Japan, people were glued to their TVs, holding their breath. Who could this hunter be? Someone asked. President Go leaned in close to the microphone and dropped a name, Hunter Jin-Woo Sung. Jin-Woo's already like a rock star because of his amazing adventures on Jeju Island. As soon as his name was mentioned, people started cheering. The room erupted with excitement. Jin-Woo was their last chance, and now he was heading home after keeping his promise to get rid of the giants. But people of Japan were super excited to see him off. So many came out to wish him well. His guide mentioned that even more folks would have shown up if not for all the cleanup work still happening in the areas the giants had wrecked. Then the guide asked Jin-Woo for something special before he left. "The Prime Minister really wants to meet you," Jin-Woo's escort said, looking super serious for the first time ever. Jin-Woo could tell he'd been pushed by some big bosses to ask this. But Jin-Woo wasn't gonna do anything unless he wanted to. "I don't want to waste my time on things that aren't important," he replied. Shaking his head, his escort nodded, trying not to laugh at how firm Jin-Woo was being. But ha. Got it. As Jin-Woo made small talk, the car rolled up to the entrance. He stepped out looking super cool. People started cheering like crazy when they saw him. Jin-Woo scanned the crowd with a smile. "It's Hunter Sung," someone shouted. Others chanted, "Hunter Jin-Woo Sung is here." Even though he couldn't understand what they were saying, Jin-Woo could tell how excited they were by the tone of their voices, and all the waving hands. Their heartfelt thanks and admiration poured out toward him. Baru watched everything while hiding in Jin-Woo's shadow. "Your Majesty," Baru said, "these people are showing their loyalty to you." "No, it's not like that," Jin-Woo replied. Baru urged, "You should wave back and show them you're paying attention." But Jin-Woo quickly interrupted. "No way. That's not what this is about." Where did Baru even learn how to act like this? Wait. Jin-Woo suddenly wondered. Do the other ants like it when you do that? Jin-Woo could almost picture Baru grinning with pride. "Of course, my king," Baru declared. Jin-Woo wasn't surprised. Baru's roars always pumped up the ant soldiers. Jin-Woo looked around at the crowd. He saw people staring at him with big smiles. Even his guide was beaming, with tears in his eyes. Jin-Woo raised his hand and waved. The crowd went wild. They clapped and cheered. "Wabhu," Jin-Woo beamed back. He felt a warm glow inside. He had never thought this would happen to him. The guide wiped his eyes and waved at Jin-Woo. "Thank you. Thank you, Hunter Sung. Thank you so much." Jin-Woo felt like a rock star. It was such a cool feeling to be appreciated by so many people. Hunter Sung emerged from the bustling crowd, his eyes fixed on the towering airplane that awaited him. The thunderous applause that had filled the airport echoed in his ears as he boarded the aircraft and disappeared into the distance. 100,000 cheering voices had celebrated his departure. The next day, a famous Japanese writer couldn't help but comment, "If we chose our leaders based on how much we love them, Hunter Sung would be Japan's first foreign prime minister." Meanwhile, halfway across the world, Christopher Reed was jolted awake by the sudden noise. He was one of the best hunters in the world, so tiny noises like rustling leaves or chirping crickets wouldn't usually wake him up. But this time something felt off. He lay there, wondering. Why was it so quiet? No matter how hard he listened, he couldn't hear a single sound. It was as if the whole world had gone completely still. Chris tossed off his covers and flung open his bedroom door. The mansion felt eerily quiet, as if no one else was around. He stood there for a moment, staring down the long empty hallway. Then, he quickly grabbed a glass from the table, ran back to his door, and hurled it down the hall, smashing it to the floor. The wine glass slipped from his hand, flying through the air before smashing into pieces on the floor, silent as a ghost. Something totally impossible just happened. A chill ran down his spine as his sharp instincts screamed that danger was coming, something he'd never faced before. Without thinking, he darted to his bedside table, grabbed his phone, and yanked out the crinkled note stuffed in his drawer. If you ever need help, call this number. President Gun-hee-go of the Hunters Association wanted to connect with someone. Before leaving the mansion, the assistant director secretly handed one of the Hunters' staff a note with this message. Chris found out later and was so angry, he almost tore the note up. But then Mrs. Zellner's face suddenly popped into his head, and he stopped himself. Could Zellner have predicted this? Chris wasn't sure, but one thing was clear, he had to get through this tough spot to find out. He flipped the paper over and saw President Go's phone number on the back. Since he knew President Go spoke English well, communication wouldn't be a problem. If Chris reached out to President Go, he could get help from Jin-Woo. At first Chris thought Jin-Woo was taking on too much and expected him to fail in Japan. But after seeing how Jin-Woo worked with his shadow soldiers, Chris realized Jin-Woo was the real deal. Plus Mrs. Zellner had already told him about Jin-Woo's skills. Hunter Jin-Woo sung. Mrs. Zellner might have been right, Chris thought. He reached to type in the numbers, but then he felt someone behind him. Before he could do anything, a tall man with blonde hair appeared, smiling widely at him. The guy looked super chill with one hand casually stuffed in his pocket. It was weird because he had just snuck into the house of an S-rank hunter, who was basically a big deal. Chris looked at them and asked, "Who are you guys?" There was one person right in front of him and two more hiding behind the wall, making it 3 intruders total. Chris wiped the sweat dripping down his face. He was already nervous about dealing with the one in front of him, and now there were 2 more coming his way. A drop of sweat trickled from his temple to his chin, as the blonde man spoke up. His voice sounded weird, almost like it wasn't from this world. "You won't survive if you're soft on humans, oh fragment of luminosity," the man said. Chris snapped back at him. "What are you even talking about?" The man just put his finger to his lips, signaling for silence. "Shush. I wasn't talking to you," the man said sharply. His perfect English shocked Chris. How was this possible? As far as Chris knew, no one could speak both human languages and magic beast tongues. The blonde man then pointed that same finger toward the ceiling. "Up there. I'm talking to the one connected to you." Chris had no idea what the intruder was going on about, but one thing was clear: this guy was being super rude. Chris's voice boomed back loudly. "You think I'm some kind of joke?" Odd suddenly, his eyes turned bright red and his whole body erupted in flames. He grew taller, smashing furniture out of the way. As he rose to nearly 4 meters high, sparks shot from his eyes like fireworks. "I'm taking at least one of you down with me," Chris roared, slamming his fist into the wall behind him. Kam-boom! The wall exploded, revealing 2 more men who had jumped back just in time. "Is that an astral body? Human can even have one." They stared at Chris's fiery transformation, totally amazed. The floor beneath the hunter started to bubble up like melting plastic. He stood his ground, ready to fight with everything he had, a fierce determination he hadn't felt since his clash with Kamish. Suddenly a loud whoosh erupted as flames shot up in a flash, engulfing everything around him. The room's contents were swept away in the inferno, and from the heart of the firestorm, Chris bellowed so loudly it shook the entire house. "Die, you beast!" he roared. What a surprise that Jin-Woo would end up sitting next to someone he knew. As he followed the flight attendant to his first-class seat, he did a double take when he saw who was sitting next to him. "Are you going to insist this is just a coincidence?" the person asked, with a smirk. "I'd prefer if you thought of it that way," they replied, sounding a bit annoyed, "but I guess that would be too much to ask." Jin-Woo's eyes widened in surprise, as he realized the blue-eyed foreigner was speaking perfect Korean. He couldn't wrap his head around it. Jin-Woo sat down, without taking his eyes off the mysterious person beside him. His mind was racing. What were the chances of running into this person here? And how could they speak his language so flawlessly? It all felt a little too strange to be just a coincidence. "All right, Mr. White," Jin-Woo said with a grin. "It's great to see you again, Hunter Sung," Adam White replied, bowing slightly with a smile. Jin-Woo glanced around the fancy first-class cabin. No big surprise, he'd already spotted 2 high-ranking hunters here. Now he realized they were also part of the Hunter Command Center team. 2 guys in black suits gave him a quick nod when their eyes met. Jin-Woo wondered why every agent like those from the Hunters Association of Korea's surveillance team wore black suits. Was it their way of letting everyone know who they were? He was so caught up in this thought that he didn't even realize Adam was talking to him. We've only met once, but you remembered my name, Adam said. Our first meeting was pretty hard to forget. Jin-Woo replied. Adam looked down, frowning. My apologies. We never thought there'd be a hunter who could resist Mrs. Selner's powers, something that totally threw Jin-Woo off. He waved his hand dismissively, done with the topic. That day the assistant director had apologized to him non-stop, and honestly, Jin-Woo wasn't interested in revisiting the drama. But one thing did pique his curiosity. Why was the Hunter Command Center reaching out again after they'd seemed to give up on him? It didn't make much sense, and now he was determined to figure it out. Jin-Woo didn't want to play tug-of-war with them. Aren't we done talking about this? He asked softly. Adam's smile disappeared. Sorry for showing up out of the blue, he said. But something super important came up, and I need to talk to you about it. Jin-Woo suddenly remembered the news he'd heard earlier. About that S-rank gate that popped up on the east coast of the US. Did you also have trouble closing that S-rank gate? Jin-Woo asked. Adam looked confused. Huh? No. That's been taken care of. Then what could this be about? Maybe it had something to do with defeating the King of Giants. Noticing Jin-Woo's curiosity, Adam pulled out his laptop and played a video. Thick black smoke filled the screen, looking like it came from a massive wildfire. Adam handed Jin-Woo the laptop, and the hunter watched the video closely. The firefighters were totally confused. These magical flames were getting stronger, every second. What's going on with this fire? One firefighter shouted. It won't go out. Another cried. This isn't normal. Someone else yelled. Hey, you there. Stay back. If even a spark lands on you, you're toast, they warned. The firefighters were stepping back nervously as the flames grew bigger and scarier by the minute. The fire just wouldn't stop, no matter what they did. It kept spreading and getting closer to where they were hiding. Burning trees crashed down one after another, creating a dangerous chain reaction. The flames seemed endless, surrounding them like an ever-growing sea of fire. God help us. Someone cried out in panic. What about backup? Another voice shouted. When's our backup getting here? Just as they were losing hope, a helicopter appeared above them. On board were mage hunters, who quickly started using their water magic to fight the flames, pouring it everywhere they could. As the water flooded the forest, the fire slowly started to fade. Jin-Woo watched with eyes wide with attention. These people were high-ranking hunters, no question about it, given their powerful magic. But even they had struggled to control the flames, which made one thing clear: whoever caused this disaster wasn't just any ordinary hunter. Ho, hunters! Someone called out. We're safe, another firefighter stammered, sounding shaky but relieved. Thank you so much, they added gratefully, before rushing off to deal with the remaining stray flames. If the hunters had gotten there even a second later, many first responders would have been in grave danger. Move in, someone shouted. The flames are fading. Another voice replied. It's over. The fire is under control. Jin-Woo watched the video, his brow furrowed in confusion. Why are you showing me this? He asked. Sure, the footage was super intense and action-packed, but why would Adam go to so much trouble to share it with him? Adam leaned in and skipped ahead to the very end. Watch this, he said, fast-forwarding to the last part. The firefighters trudged deeper into the dark, smoky woods, searching for where the fire had begun. They found a clearing where something big had blown up. The ground was scorched in a wide circle, showing just how powerful the explosion must have been. In the middle of the circle was a body lying face down on the ground.